What's up, everybody? Welcome back, Correlation Nation. And today we're going to be going over UFC's Dana White Contender Series, week number 4. Okay, we're already in week 4, but we have some really good fights. I started going through this. I didn't get to this card until later in the week, and when I did, I was really surprised at some of these fighters. I mean, we got some really good bouts coming up tonight. So I know that this is a very last second video, but I still thought it was worth going ahead and giving my thoughts and opinions, going through the breakdowns, even if it is last seconds. If nothing else, at least for reference, okay? Because, we're trying to improve the process and we're trying to figure out how to get these right. We want to be as accurate as absolutely possible. So, without further ado, let's hop right into this card. It's five bouts, pretty typical for a Dana White's Contender Series night. And the first bout we have is the Tommy McMillan going against David Magoyan. And both these guys look pretty solid. So let's hop on over to our notes of these two guys. This thing doesn't ever do what I want it to, so here we go. Alright, Tommy McMillan, this guy's a light-footed striker, bladed stance, good bounce, uses measured pressure, and has decent range management. This guy looks a bit aggressive. He carries his hands low. He has a solid left jab, a clean 1-2. Likes throwing a step-in knee. And this guy has aggressive clinch, striking. Seems to have a legit ground game. Some takedown ability, kind of in question. You're looking at this. I think the reason that is because it's been effective for him. But it doesn't look real clean or technical. And again, it's against the lower level competition. So it will be interesting to see how that is for him. But I will mention, I believe this guy's out of MMA Lab. Really good camp. Trains, with some really good guys. I don't know if he's trained with like Sean O'Malley or like Mario Batista or whatever, but these are some of the guys that are out of that same camp, I believe. So if it does end up on the ground, he seems to scramble pretty well. He floats, advances, and is a ground and pound to submission guy. He will use ground and pound, but I think a bit more of like a grappler. Now, his opponent, David Magoyan, this guy is a light-footed striker, good movement, uses measured pressure and solid range management as well. He can be a bit low output, but he looks to explode into his combinations. Striking is a bit herky-jerky, and he also has what seems to be a pretty explosive takedown ability. This guy will float to maintain control really well. Violent ground and pound. He's an opportunistic grappler. So when I look at these guys, I'm really thinking that David Magoyan is. I would like to see them size up physically, but I do think that he's going to be able to dictate where the fight goes a little bit more. I think with his explosive takedown ability as well as his footwork, I think that he can edge this out. And this is a tough fight to call. I mean, both these guys show real ability. These are guys that I see that have potential. And the under's probably not, or not the under, but like fight doesn't go is probably not the worst look. That's an angle I could see working, and I think enjoy it because it's really tough to call. Both these guys want to grapple, but also show pretty well-rounded skill set on the feet. I would really like to see how they match up physically, but I'm gonna leave with David Magoyan, and I'll be keeping an eye out on what other people have to say about this. And yeah, we're just going to move on to the next fight. So the next fight we have is Eduardo Enrique going against Antoine Ho. Another one. Both these guys look pretty solid. And let's go ahead and look at our notes on these two. Eduardo is fairly light-footed striker. He tends to be pretty plotty, using measured pressure while planting his feet. But, he does have pretty good footwork. Shows pretty good bounce, evading, and seems to be a nasty counter striker. Commits to two to three punch combinations, and they are pretty heavy. Well timed and precise. Takedown defense looks pretty decent. He has a solid sprawl with good balance. Patient on the ground, but will work to get up. And then on the other side, Antoine. This guy is light-footed striker. Bladed stance, shows nice bounce with decent range management. Kind of like a karate-esque style. Kick heavy attack, lightning fast. He has nice backside kicks. He throws to all levels. He has a nice spinning heel kick. Decent left jab. Throws a long right cross. Has a nice counter right cross. Doesn't accept bottom position. This guy has a pretty solid get-up game, from what I can tell. And this guy as well, I believe, is out of MMA Labs. And he also fought on Contender Series last year, if I'm not mistaken. So this guy, it's another one that, all in all, I think both these guys are pretty good. But, I'm going to favor Antoine in this one. I think that he's just the more dynamic guy. And, it'll be interesting. This will be another one that's really, really interesting. But I'm going to go with Antoine. I have no idea what the odds on these fights are. Haven't even looked at them. So that's not playing a factor into any of my decisions here. I have no idea what these lines look like. But I do think that Antoine should be the favorite in this match. Now, when we move on to the next bout, we have Mandel Nalo going against Samuel Silva. And again, another pretty good fight. I think Mandela's fought in like Bellator and stuff. Not real young. I think he might be like early 30s, and then Silva might be a bit younger. And both these guys look, relatively good. Let's pull up our notes. So, Mandel, this guy is a fairly light-footed striker. He has a very wide-bladed stance. Susceptible to leg kicks. I wrote this, and then I actually seen in one of his films that he got TKO'd by a leg kick that just kind of put him out of commission. He was tripping over his ankle, hit the cranial nerve or whatever, and his leg was toast after that. But anyways, has that bladed stance, a bit plotting pressure style with a good bounce on the step back. He fights long, has a long, stiff left jab, nice teep kick, tends to carry his hands a bit low, a bit of a low volume fighter, but he looks strong in the clinch. He's an effective clinch striker. He'll be throwing shoulder strikes, stays busy with the knees, stuff like that. And takedown defense looks solid. But, if he is taken down, doesn't show great urgency getting up. And then on the other side of him, we have Samuel. And Samuel, this guy is a light-footed striker. Shows good bounce, solid range management, heavy backside kicks, nasty right cross counter too. So he'll throw it singularly from range, but he'll also counter with it, and it's pretty nasty. I like his right cross. Seems to be a competent grappler, choking arms, has long skinny arms, and looks to have a pretty strong squeeze on the guillotine. And you'll see that he has a few of those on his record, and I've seen a few of them. They look, mostly that he's just got a pretty good technique on it, and he's able to capitalize with his frame and his, technique. So I think it looks pretty solid. And honestly, I think he's the more dynamic fighter here. I think that Silva's probably going to win this fight. I think he's a little bit more willing to go first. And, I favor him to win this fight. So I'll be picking him. Now, we have Theo Haig and let's see if we can get this guy's name right. Let me pull him up in the notes. Cesare Olejniczak. Maybe not the best, probably not the worst. And these guys will be facing off. So Theo, this guy is a slightly light-footed striker, a bit of bounce on the step back, but tends to be pretty plotty. Striking looks undeveloped, uneducated guard. Boxing is a bit wide, maybe even slow. I got real questions around that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But he likes to throw a backside right side kick. Uh, Keeps head on the center line. Don't love that. Will look to close the gap pretty aggressively. And he's an aggressive fighter in close quarters. Has shown an ability to get the fight to the mat. Not sure how great it is, but again, like we mentioned earlier, it's something he's done effectively, and we'll just see how it goes for him as he moves up in competition, and goes against more well-rounded fighters. But he has a nice blend of ground and pound and aggressive grappling. I do like that, and he floats well on top and transitions well. And then he's going against Cesare. This guy is a light-footed striker. Uses a lot of small movement. He takes small steps and does a lot of constant body movement. Fights behind a nice two-level right jab. Seems to counter quite well. Power looks legit. Questionable takedown defense. Seems to have a decent sprawl, but doesn't seem to have a great get-up game. But he is a pretty active defensive grappler. I do like that. He'll look for submissions and stuff like that. But his get-up game's not super strong. Now I do think that this is a tough fight to call because Theo is definitely going to be winning this fight on the ground, and I think Olejniczuk or whatever is going to be winning this fight on the feet. And it's really tough to call, but I do think that because Theo's aggressive enough, as long as he doesn't get just freaking bonked and put out cold, which could happen, I think that he should be able to get this fight down. And I just see him as like the more imposing grappler. I think that he should be able to impose himself on this guy. So I'm going to take Theo. It's kind of the way I'm leaning. But I think both these guys are pretty good. I'd like to see Cesare go up against... I don't know, I liked him. I liked his tape. I liked the way he looked. And there's a real chance he can win this. So, maybe this is one that just doesn't go long. So it'd be interesting to see how these guys match up. And then the final fight of the night, we have Jack Cognan going against... We're going to try this again. John Paul. Hold on. Labasnoyani. That's probably awful. I'm so sorry, guys. Forgive me as I tried. Anyways, this guy, we got a fairly light-footed striker. And let me pull this. We're talking about Jack, just so we're on the same page. Fairly light-footed striker. Switch stance. Shows some bounce, but doesn't seem to manage distance very well. Striking looks fairly technical. He has a high guard, nice teep kick and side kick from range. Decent 1-2. I did see that, he does have a jab that he can fight behind, but I don't know. I'm still in question how well his range management is, but he has shown that he can do it. I just don't know that he always will. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and if there's something that we can correct in our breakdown of this guy. But this guy does like to throw a lead uppercut. He looks a bit stiff, though. That does come with some pretty solid power. And one thing that I also notated was that he has a surprisingly accurate spinning heel kick. I don't know why I can't say heel kick. I botched that twice now. But, yeah, it's surprisingly accurate. It's not the quickest thing ever, but, he flicks it out there and, he's able to connect with it. It's pretty impressive. But this guy will fade. After about the 6, 7, maybe 8-minute mark, you're going to see this guy starts to become almost a different fighter. He becomes pretty stationary when labored, but he has shown that he has a bit of dog in him. He will sprawl a bit, but his takedown defense seems to be a pretty gaping hole, and he doesn't have a great get-up game. But, because he's kind of big, he will look to just kind of muscle his way up, I guess, if that presents itself. But yeah, I don't really love his process for getting up or defending takedowns. I don't think it's really there. So I think he has a big hole in his game there. And then when we look at the other side at John Paul, This guy's light-footed striker, a bit front-loaded, but shows pretty good movement with decent range management. Seems to be an effective switch stance fighter. He has a stiff jab from both stances, explosive follow-ups. And he has good movement in the pocket. He shows pretty good body movement and head movement in the pocket. I do like that. This guy seems to have a nasty defensive grappling game. This guy transitions seamlessly. And, he just rolls in transitions and puts himself in pretty good spots in grappling scenarios. So I think this guy's a pretty complete fighter. I did like what I seen on him. And I think between him, Silva looks pretty legit. And Antoine, I like Antoine quite a bit as well. And then even the David McGoyan and Tommy McMillan. All these guys look like legit UFC fighters in my opinion. So, it'll be interesting to see who wins these fights. And I certainly don't think it's going to be the last that we hear from some of these guys. I think that even if they don't win, there's a chance, depending on what happens, that they could get another opportunity on the Contender Series, because I do think that some of these guys have the legit, real talent to be in the UFC. So it'll be interesting watching these fights. I think, like I said, banger card. All these guys are pretty good. Should be some pretty fun fights tonight. Good luck to everyone. Catch you later. Correlation Nation. Love y'all.